Let's talk about Andrew Puzder. I'm Ryan Grimm. I'm the Washington Bureau Chief for the Huffington Post. I'm here for the Young Turks. Ready to take some of your questions about the nominee to be the Labor Secretary. Now that Betsy DeVos has been confirmed in that historic tie-breaking vote by Vice President Mike Pence, Democrats and the opposition are turning their fire on the remaining nominees. We've Steve Mnuchin for the Treasury Secretary, Tom Price for HHS, and Andrew Puzder for the Labor Secretary. Let's talk about him right now. Who is Andy Puzder? First of all, he's the CEO of Hardee's and Carl's Jr. Immediately, an extraordinarily controversial decision to say that we're going to have a kind of fast food tycoon oversee workplace regulations and oversee overtime pay. But what's most important this week is that on Monday night, I had a little bit of in Washington, what counts as a scoop here. I reported that Andrew Puzder had hired an undocumented immigrant as part of his household help and had declined to pay back taxes or declined to pay taxes at the time for this employee. When he found out that she was undocumented, he did the humane thing. He offered to move her through the legal process and try to help her become a permanent resident. She rejected that offer, suspecting that if she took it up, she'd wind up detained and deported, and so the two parted ways at that point. It did not become public until we reported it on Monday night. Interestingly, since then, there's been a renewed attention to Andy Puzder. There have been allegations in the past that he beat his wife. She said in an affidavit that he'd been abusive. She has since withdrawn that allegation and said that she made it in the context of a divorce settlement. He's also been found guilty of violating labor laws across the board with regard to his Hardee's and Carl's Jr. operations. But what the media here in Washington has cared about is that he hired one undocumented person to be part of his help. Now, I feel a little complicit next. I'm the one that reported it, but it's my job to report it first and then tell you what my opinion is of it later. I can tell you politically, obviously, there is the hypocritical element to it. Donald Trump ran on rounding people up and deporting them, in his pledge to make America great again. Whereas Andrew Puzder has called for immigration reform and then also employed somebody without papers. So you have the obvious hypocrisy, but is that the thing that people ought to be focused on rather than the allegations of domestic violence and the breaking of labor laws? Now, since the story came out, a number of groups have picked up on the statement that he gave me, which said that after he discovered that she was working illegally, he paid back taxes to the state of California. That raised a lot of red flags because it suggested that he was not already paying taxes and suggested that this person who knows more about workplace law than most people in the country, because you learn about workplace laws if you're running a fast food restaurant, willingly broke labor laws. And so Andy Puzder's nomination at this point has been described by one observer as kind of the weak animal in the herd. As a number of as everybody seems to be slipping through with 50, 51, 52 votes, Democrats think that Puzder may be the one that they can undo. He has delayed his hearing repeatedly and again this week, and currently he is not even on the calendar to be heard for his hearing.
Is it true that Puzder's wife went on a daytime talk show to talk about domestic abuse?
Yes, Puzder's wife went on the Oprah Winfrey Show incognito and talked about the abuse. Nobody has been able to find that tape. There's no question of whether or not it exists. Nobody is disputing that she did this. Oprah Winfrey employees, former producers, have searched through the archives from the 80s and have been unable to find it. It's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack. But yes, that's a fact. And if somebody could find that video, that could certainly be the nail in the coffin, just because the image of her telling the story would be so much more powerful than words in an affidavit. Even though words in an affidavit have been more than enough to sink nominees in the past.
Can you think of examples of past nominees who were scuttled by the hiring of an undocumented worker?
Sure. So the most famous one was Zoe Baird, and her name kind of has become synonymous with this problem. She was President Bill Clinton's first nominee to be Attorney General. Turned out that she had what they call a nanny problem. She had hired some undocumented people to do household work, had not paid taxes on it. When it emerged, she withdrew. Now, what I was told by people who are familiar with the Trump transition and administration's thinking on this is that they looked at the Zoe Baird example and saw not a model, but hypocrisy. Zoe Baird later was appointed to a variety of commissions within the federal government by President Bill Clinton. President George W. Bush put her on a number of government panels. Obama also put her on a number of government panels, and she's been serving in and out of government more or less since the early 1990s. And so the argument that the Trump team made was, okay, they got her, they caught her using undocumented help. She fell, but then when the public looked away, they put her back in government anyway, and that's the kind of back-scratching elite stuff that we don't care about. That's kind of the way that they framed it to Andy Puzder when they told him, you don't need to drop out because of this allegation. The kind of model has changed and the rules have changed. So Zoe Baird certainly wasn't the last, but when people talk about this situation, they say, does he or she have a Zoe Baird problem?
Tony is talking about labor laws that Puzders was fined for not paying his employees and discriminating. Is that true?
So there's a whole gamut of violations that Hardee's and Carl's Jr. under Puzders were guilty of. So one of them was, let's say you're working a shift and it gets slow at Hardee's. The manager would tell you to clock out, go into the parking lot, and you can't leave. You hang out in the parking lot unpaid. And when it gets busy again, you come back in. The software was kind of designed in a way that would try to reduce people's hours in a way that was that stretched the law and was probably illegal, and that, designed in a way that broke the law. Dave Jamieson has done some terrific reporting on this for us. I'd encourage people to look up his stories on it. He got through a Freedom of Information request, got a lot of the labor complaints that were sustained. So these are not allegations; these are things that the Labor Department said no, these were violations, and it's all of the same variety, squeezing people's wages, and particularly pitting managers. And if anybody who's worked in a fast food restaurant will understand this, pitting low-level managers against their employees. So the low-level manager is only making a few $100s a week, just enough to get them over the salary threshold, which means they don't have to pay them overtime, but then judging them on how low they can keep their labor costs and giving them bonuses based on that. And so they pit the two low-level people against each other, and they're each kind of squeezing each other.
Rhea Becker says these nominees are awful beyond imagination. Zoe Baird is no comparison. Can you talk about what the Labor Department is actually supposed to do and how this might affect things like minimum wage or workers' protections?
The two most important things that the Labor Department have done under the Obama administration, one is put in place a rule that basically says that pension fund managers and financial managers cannot rip you off. Under current law, they are allowed to kind of move your money into places that is not best for you, but is actually best for them. They put into place what's called a fiduciary rule that says, no, if you're managing somebody's money, you have to do what's best for them, not what's best for you. The Trump administration is going to roll back that rule. The second one is the overtime threshold. The Obama administration moved the threshold, the salaried threshold, up to about $48,000 a year. And what that means is that if you make less than $48,000 a year, it doesn't matter if the dollar store says that you're a manager. You still are entitled to overtime pay, because one of the biggest scams that corporations get away with is saying, okay, hey, you're an assistant manager, and we're going to pay you a salary of $23,000 a year, $27,000 a year. And then they turn around and say, well, now you're an assistant manager, so you're part of the leadership team, so you need to be working around the clock. And so people wind up putting in these 70, 80, 90, 100-hour weeks at to $27,000 a year, never once earning overtime pay. What the Obama administration says doesn't matter what you say that person is. You can call them the CEO, but if you pay them less than $48,000 a year, then you owe them overtime if they work more than 40 hours. And so that's the rule. It's currently on hold because of a lawsuit by Andy Puzder and a number of other fast food titans. If that lawsuit, if the government prevails and the rule goes into place, you can expect that Andy Puzder or whoever the labor nominee is going to push to roll that back. It'll be politically painful for them to do it, but it's more painful for Dollar General to actually pay its employees. So Andy Puzder was actually still a member of the trade association that was battling the Labor Department up until just a few weeks ago. So even after he was nominated to be Labor Secretary, he literally stayed on the board of the lobbying group that was battling the Department of Labor, which is kind of Howard Zinn level stuff.